The void beyond the spiral arm of the Antheris galaxy had always been quiet. Too quiet, some would say. Which was precisely why the Valeran Interstellar Research Council had chosen this location for Celestara Station. Against the backdrop of distant stars and the faint luminescence of space dust, the station's elegant spires and crystalline observation domes gleamed like a jewel adrift in the cosmos. Dr. Aaron Velrai adjusted the calibration on the quantum translator, his slender fingers dancing across holographic glyphs that hovered above the ancient tablet. As the foremost quantum linguist in the Valeran Cooperative, he had been specially selected for this assignment, deciphering the strange markings found on a derelict vessel dating back nearly 8 millennia. "Any progress today, Aaron?" The deep, melodic voice of Captain Solon Harrow filled the research chamber as the tall, silver-skinned officer of the Royal Valeran Fleet entered. His uniform, adorned with the sigils of peace and knowledge, contrasted with the utilitarian design of the holsters at his sides, a reminder that even in this peaceful region, the Valeran maintained vigilance. Aaron's four-fingered hand brushed through his luminescent hair, a habit that betrayed his frustration. "The pattern recognition algorithms are detecting similarities with the Proto-Zolaran script, but there's a quantum resonance in these glyphs that defies conventional translation matrices." Captain Harrow moved closer, his crystalline eyes reflecting the swirling holographic symbols. "The High Council is growing impatient. This quantum wave bridge project has consumed more resources than the last 3 major initiatives combined. Science cannot be rushed, Captain," Aaron replied, his voice carrying the gentle chime characteristic of the Valeran species, especially when dealing with technologies that could potentially connect galaxies instantaneously. Harrow nodded reluctantly. "Just remember, Doctor, that we share this station with representatives from 12 peaceful species. Whatever secrets this ancient technology holds, we must ensure it benefits all, not just the Valeran." As Harrow departed, Aaron returned to his work, focusing on a particular sequence that had been troubling him for weeks. The glyphs seemed to shift subtly as he observed them, almost as if they were responding to his attention. Applying a new quantum resonance filter, he attempted once more to decipher the central command sequence. "Computer, apply translation matrix Velrai Theta 9 to the primary sequence." The station's AI responded with a soft tone as the holographic symbols rearranged themselves, morphing into recognizable patterns. Aaron's eyes widened as the translation began to form coherent phrases. "When darkness rises, call upon the final protector." A surge of excitement rushed through him. After months of failure, a breakthrough. His fingers moved rapidly across the interface, adjusting parameters, enhancing the accuracy of the translation. In his eagerness, he failed to notice a critical shift in one of the quantum variables, a seemingly insignificant detail that would soon prove catastrophic. "Initiating final sequence correlation," he announced to the empty laboratory, activating the command protocol that would complete the translation process. The ancient tablet began to hum, a low vibration that quickly intensified. The laboratory's lights flickered as power surged through the station systems. Before Aaron could abort the sequence, a brilliant beam of energy erupted from the artifact, shooting upward through the station's quantum communication array and into the vast emptiness of space. "By the celestial harmony," Aaron whispered, horror dawning on his face as emergency alarms blared throughout the station. "What have I done?" In that moment, though he couldn't possibly know it, Dr. Aaron Velrai had just sent a distress signal across the galaxy, one that would summon a force the peaceful Valeran had never encountered before. The force of Deathworlders. Captain Harrow was in the midst of a routine inspection of the station's defensive systems when the first alarm sounded. The peaceful Valeran might prioritize diplomacy and scientific advancement, but they weren't naive. Celestara Station maintained a modest array of defensive capabilities, primarily designed to repel space debris and the occasional pirate vessel. "Status report," he commanded, rushing into the command center where officers frantically worked at their stations. "Massive energy surge from Research Laboratory 7, reported his second-in-command, Lieutenant Varia. "It appears Dr. Velrai has activated some kind of beacon using the ancient artifact." Harrow's face darkened. "What kind of beacon?" "Unknown, sir. But it's broadcasting on all frequencies, including several we've never detected before. The signal pattern suggests a distress call." "A distress call?" Harrow's voice dropped dangerously low. "Who authorized this?" Before anyone could respond, a communications officer interrupted. "Captain, we're receiving reports from our outpost vessels. The signal is propagating through subspace at an impossible rate. It's already reached beyond our territory." Harrow's training took over. "Deploy defensive interceptors. I want a full containment perimeter established around this station immediately. And get me Dr. Velrai." As officers scrambled to execute his orders, Harrow strode to the main view screen, which displayed the vast emptiness of space surrounding the station. Something about this situation filled him with a sense of foreboding he couldn't quite articulate. A primal instinct that whatever responded to this unauthorized distress call would not come bearing gifts of peace. Aboard the Signar patrol vessel, Theta 7, Navigation Officer Pelia Dorn stared at her console in confusion. The unusual signal had appeared suddenly, cutting through the background noise of space like a knife. Its pattern was unlike anything in the Signar database, yet somehow familiar. "Commander," she called, "I'm detecting an unusual signal originating from Velaran space. It appears to be some kind of automated distress beacon, but the coding is strange." Commander Tell approached, his reptilian features set in a grimace. "Strange how?" "It's broadcasting on frequencies our systems shouldn't even be able to detect. And the message itself." She hesitated. "It seems to be requesting immediate military assistance. Something about the final protector." The commander's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of concern among the Signar. "Forward the signal to Central Command and maintain our patrol route. Whatever the Valeran have gotten themselves into, it's not our concern unless ordered otherwise." Officer Dorn nodded and transmitted the data. What neither of them realized was that their ship's automated relay systems had already done more than just inform Signar Command. They had broadcast the signal's coordinates to every registered ally in the quadrant, including a species they had only recently established tentative diplomatic relations with. A species that interpreted distress calls very differently than most galactic civilizations. Across the void, in a region of space the Valeran had never explored, the signal reached the automated defense network of the Terran Alliance. Unlike the peaceful species of the Valeran Cooperative, humans had evolved on what other species would classify as a death world, a planet so hostile and dangerous that its inhabitants had to develop exceptional resilience, aggression, and protective instincts merely to survive. Within the command center of the T.A. Resolute, Fleet Admiral Katarina Chen watched as a holographic representation of the galaxy highlighted the source of the distress call. "Analysis," she demanded. The ship's AI, Aegis, responded immediately. "Signal confirmed as Priority Alpha Distress Beacon. Admiral, translation matrix indicates a request for immediate military intervention against an overwhelming hostile force. Signal originates from coordinates within unexplored space, approximately 3.7 light-years, beyond our established treaty boundaries." Admiral Chen's expression remained impassive, but her mind raced through the implications. The Terran Alliance had built its reputation on one fundamental principle: humanity always responds to distress calls. It was more than policy. It was the cornerstone of their interstellar relations, a promise that had earned them both respect and wariness from other species. "Prepare a response fleet," she ordered. "All available combat-ready vessels within range are to converge on those coordinates at maximum sustainable speed. Alert our diplomatic corps to prepare first contact protocols. But this is primarily a rescue operation, until proven otherwise. Admiral, her executive officer interjected, those coordinates are well outside our jurisdiction. The diplomatic implications of sending a military force are less important than responding to a call for help. Chen finished firmly. We've built our entire interstellar reputation on being the species that shows up when called. I won't be the first admiral to break that promise. As the Aegis system transmitted the deployment orders throughout the Terran fleet, ships of all sizes and configurations began altering their courses. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and support vessels, each crewed by humans who had grown up with stories of their ancestors' first steps into the galaxy, of the oath taken by every Terran vessel. We answer every call. None of them questioned the order. If someone needed protection, the Deathworlders would come. Back at Celestara Station, chaos had erupted. Dr. Aaron Velrai stood before the station's governing council, his usual composure shattered by the weight of what he had inadvertently done. I misinterpreted a single quantum variance in the third sequence, he explained, his voice trembling. What I believed was an activation protocol for the wave bridge technology was actually an emergency beacon, one designed to summon military assistance from whoever might be listening. Minister Kale, the eldest council member, fixed Aaron with a cold stare. And now this beacon continues to broadcast despite your attempts to deactivate it? The system has locked itself into a recursive loop, Aaron confirmed. It's as if the ancient technology was designed specifically to prevent deactivation once triggered. General Sora, the council's military advisor, leaned forward. Then we must prepare for whoever, or whatever, answers this call. Captain Harrow, what defensive options do we have? Harrow straightened. Our interceptors are deployed in standard defense formation, and I've recalled 2 patrol cruisers from the neighboring sector. However, Celestara was never designed as a military installation. Our defenses are minimal at best. Perhaps we should consider evacuation, suggested another council member. Impossible, Aaron interrupted. The quantum distortion created by the beacon is interfering with our long-range transportation systems. We can launch short-range shuttles, but any attempt to open a jump portal within 50,000 kilometers would be catastrophic. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber, broken only when Captain Harrow's communicator chimed urgently. Report, he commanded. Captain, we're detecting multiple vessels approaching at high velocity. Configuration unknown, but their energy signatures suggest advanced weaponry and substantial shield capacity. Harrow looked up, meeting the council's collective gaze. It appears we're about to meet whoever answers distress calls in this part of the galaxy. Lieutenant Mara Thorne stood at attention on the bridge of the T.A.S., Defiant, watching as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. A tactical officer by training, she had been reassigned to communications for this mission due to her expertise in xenolinguistics, a valuable skill when making first contact with an unknown species. Arrival at coordinates complete, Captain, reported the navigator. Sensors detecting a large space station and approximately 20 smaller vessels in defensive formation around it. Captain Reynolds, a veteran of 3 first contact scenarios, nodded. Any signs of battle or distress? Negative, sir. The station appears intact, though our sensors are detecting unusual energy patterns, consistent with advanced quantum technology. Reynolds frowned. Yet they sent a priority Alpha distress call. Lieutenant Thorne, open a channel to the station. Let's find out what we're dealing with. Channel open, sir. This is Captain James Reynolds of the Terran Alliance ship Defiant. We are responding to your distress signal and stand ready to render assistance. Please identify yourselves and the nature of your emergency. The view screen remained blank for several moments before flickering to life, revealing a silver-skinned humanoid with crystalline eyes that seemed to shimmer with inner light. This is Captain Solon Harrow of the Velaran Cooperative, commanding Celestera Research Station. We did not intentionally summon you, Terran vessel. There has been a misunderstanding. Reynolds exchanged a glance with Thorne before responding. We received a priority Alpha distress call from your coordinates. Are you stating that your station is not under threat? The signal was activated accidentally during research into ancient technology. Harrow explained, his tone careful. We are attempting to deactivate it now. There is no emergency requiring your impressive response force. As if on cue, the tactical officer spoke up. Sir, sensors are detecting the arrival of additional Terran vessels. The Resolute, Intrepid, and Valiant have just entered the system, along with their escort groups. Reynolds maintained his diplomatic composure, despite the growing complexity of the situation. Captain Harrow, I understand this may have been an accident, but the Terran Alliance takes all distress calls seriously. Our protocol requires a thorough assessment before we withdraw. I request permission to send a shuttle with representatives to discuss this situation directly. On screen, Harrow appeared to consult with someone off camera before responding. That would be acceptable. However, we request that your vessels maintain their current distance from our station. Your weapon signatures are causing considerable concern among our people. Agreed, provided your vessels do the same. We'll prepare a diplomatic team immediately. As the communication ended, Lieutenant Thorne approached her captain. Sir, permission to speak freely? Go ahead, Lieutenant. Something doesn't add up. The Velaran appear technologically advanced, yet claim they can't deactivate a simple distress beacon? And did you notice how their defense vessels have been subtly repositioning since we arrived? Reynolds nodded grimly. I noticed. Prepare the shuttle as discussed, but quietly alert security to prepare for contingencies. And, Lieutenant, you'll be leading the diplomatic team. Your linguistic skills may prove valuable if there's more to this misunderstanding than they're admitting. Yes, sir. As Thorne departed to prepare for the mission, Reynolds gazed at the elegant, crystalline structure of Celestera Station displayed on the view screen. In his 20 years of space service, he had learned one universal truth. When someone said there had been a misunderstanding, it usually meant they were hiding something potentially dangerous. Dr. Aaron Velrai paced anxiously in his laboratory, surrounded by holographic projections of the ancient artifacts' code sequences. Despite his best efforts, the quantum beacon continued its relentless broadcast, calling out to the stars with its plea for protection. Doctor, the Terran representatives will dock in approximately 20 minutes, announced Captain Harrow as he entered the lab. I need you to prepare a simplified explanation of what happened, one that will convince them to leave without further complications. Aaron looked up, his expression troubled. Captain, I'm not certain deception is the wisest course here. These Terrans responded remarkably quickly to a distress call from unknown origins. That suggests a culture with a deep commitment to rendering aid, or a culture eager for any excuse to deploy military forces into Velaran space. Harrow countered. Have you seen their ships? Each one carries enough firepower to obliterate this entire station. The council is divided. Minister Kale advocates for transparency, while General Sora insists we must protect our research at all costs. And what do you believe, Captain? Harrow's crystalline eyes hardened. I believe in protecting Celestera and everyone aboard it. If that means managing these Terrans carefully until they leave, so be it. Before Aaron could respond, the laboratory's sensors chimed with an alert. Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations near Research Module 8. It doesn't match any scheduled experiments. Both Velaran moved to the monitoring station, where a holographic display showed a section of the station's outer ring. A small, dark vessel had attached itself to the hull, a ship that matched neither Velaran nor the newly arrived Terran design. That's not one of ours, Harrow stated unnecessarily, already activating his communicator. Security team to research Module 8 immediately. Possible unauthorized boarding in progress. Aaron studied the readings with growing alarm. Captain, whatever that vessel is, it's generating interference patterns that are actually amplifying the beacon signal. It's almost as if what, Doctor? As if they're deliberately strengthening our distress call. Aaron's voice dropped to a whisper. Captain, I don't think these are Terrans. The design characteristics match rumors I've heard of Ryzok smuggler vessels. Harrow's expression darkened further. Smugglers? What would they want with a research station? The artifact, Aaron replied instantly. Its quantum properties alone would fetch an astronomical price on the black market. And if they've learned of the wave bridge technology. The captain was already moving toward the exit. Secure the artifact. Doctor, I'm going to reinforce the security team. And pray these Terrans don't interpret this new development as a reason to launch a full-scale intervention. As Harrow departed, Aaron turned back to the ancient tablet, its surface now pulsing with an ominous glow. For the first time since the crisis began, he wondered if perhaps they might actually need the protection the beacon had requested. Lieutenant Mara Thorne felt the subtle vibration as the diplomatic shuttle docked with Celestara Station. Beside her, Security Chief Marcus Wade checked his sidearm discreetly, standard procedure for any off-ship mission, though they had agreed to minimize visible armaments to avoid alarming their hosts. Remember, Thorne instructed the small team, we're here to assess the situation, offer assistance deactivating their beacon, and gather information about these Valeran. The captain's orders are explicit. Diplomatic approach, non-threatening posture, but maintain alertness. The airlock cycled open to reveal a reception area of breathtaking beauty. The walls seemed to be living crystal, shifting with subtle colors that responded to the movement of air and sound. Two Valeran officials waited, their silver skin luminescent under the station's ambient lighting. Welcome to Celestara Station, the taller one greeted them. I am Minister Kale of the Valeran High Council. This is my associate, Scientific Director Alara. We appreciate your prompt response to our unintended signal. Thorne stepped forward. Lieutenant Mara Thorne, representing Captain Reynolds of the T.A.S. Defiant. We're pleased to establish first contact with the Valeran, though we wish it were under less ambiguous circumstances. Indeed, Minister Kale responded with a slight bow. If you'll follow me, we've prepared a briefing on the nature of the accident. I assure you, there is no emergency requiring military intervention. As they moved through the station's corridors, Thorne noticed the subtle signs of tension. Valeran staff moving with hurried purpose, security personnel positioned at key junctions, and occasional announcements in the musical Valeran language that her universal translator couldn't quite capture. Your station is remarkably beautiful, she commented, gathering information while maintaining diplomatic pleasantries. How long has it been operational? Celestara was commissioned 8 standard cycles ago. Director Alara replied. It serves as our primary quantum research facility, with particular focus on communication and transportation technologies. Security Chief Wade, ever observant, nodded toward a passing group of armed Valeran. Your security seems quite alert for a routine day at a research facility. Minister Kale's expression remained perfectly composed. Merely a precaution. Your fleet's arrival has necessitated certain protocol adjustments. Before further discussion could develop, the station's lighting suddenly shifted to a pulsing amber, and announcements echoed through the corridors in urgent tones. Thorne's translator finally managed to parse the message. Security alert in Research Module 8. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately. Minister Kale's composure fractured for a moment before he smoothly continued. A minor laboratory incident. I'm sure, nothing to concern ourselves with. Wade's hand moved subtly closer to his weapon. Sounds like more than a minor incident. Minister, perhaps we should postpone our meeting until your staff has the situation under control. That won't be necessary, Cale insisted. Just as Thorne's communicator chimed with an incoming transmission from the Defiant. Lieutenant, Captain Reynolds' voice came through clearly. Our sensors are detecting weapons fire aboard the station. Additionally, we've identified an unregistered vessel attached to the station's outer hull. Neither Valeran nor Terran in origin. What's your status? All pretense of diplomatic calm evaporated as Wade and his security team immediately moved into defensive positions around Thorne. Minister Cale, Thorne said firmly. It appears your minor laboratory incident involves unauthorized boarders and weapons discharge. I suggest you explain the actual situation immediately, or we will be forced to consider this a hostile scenario. The minister's crystalline eyes darted between the Terrans before he finally sighed in resignation. Very well. We are dealing with what appears to be a raid by Rhizok smugglers. They seem to be targeting the very artifact that accidentally triggered the distress beacon. And you didn't think this information was relevant to share with us? Wade asked incredulously. We believed we could handle the situation internally, Cale replied defensively. The Valeran do not typically involve outsiders in our security matters. Thorne made a quick decision. Captain, we have confirmation of hostile action aboard the station. Request permission to offer assistance to station security in repelling boarders. Permission granted, Lieutenant. But be advised, we're detecting increasing quantum distortions from the station. Whatever they've got over there, it's becoming increasingly unstable. Turning to Minister Cale, Thorne's expression hardened. Take us to Research Module 8, now. Captain Solon Harrow ducked behind a reinforced console as energy weapons fire sizzled through the air where he had stood moments before. The security team had engaged the intruders, definitely Rhizok smugglers, as Aaron had suspected, but the battle was not going well. The raiders were using advanced disruptor weapons that overwhelmed the Valerans' primarily defensive technology. Captain, one of his officers called from across the chamber. They're breaking through to the inner laboratory. We can't hold them much longer. Harrow grimaced. If the smugglers reach the artifact, they could potentially steal not only a priceless historical treasure, but also the quantum technology that had taken years to develop. Worse, if they damage the artifact while it was in its current activated state, the resulting quantum cascade could devastate half the station. Maintain position, he ordered. Reinforcements are coming. Though whether those reinforcements would arrive in time was another question entirely. The Valeran were not warriors by nature. Their security forces were trained primarily in containment and defense, not aggressive combat operations. A sudden explosion rocked the module, sending debris flying across the chamber. Through the smoke, Harrow saw several of his officers fall, their silver skin darkened by weapon burns. The smugglers were advancing, their humanoid forms protected by advanced combat armor that made them almost impossible to distinguish individually. Fall back to the secondary containment area, Harrow commanded, helping a wounded officer to her feet. We need to... His order was interrupted by the sound of the module's outer doors sliding open. Harrow tensed, expecting more smugglers to pour through. But instead, he saw the Terran diplomatic team, now clearly revealed as anything but diplomats. The humans moved with disciplined precision, their weapons drawn but held with the easy confidence of experienced combatants. Captain Harrow, the female Terran, Lieutenant Thorne, he recalled, approached his position, somehow managing to look both alert to threats and calmly in control. We detected weapons fire. What's the situation? Swallowing his pride, Harrow gestured toward the inner laboratory. Rhizok smugglers. At least 8 that we've identified. They're attempting to steal an ancient artifact of immense power, the same one that accidentally triggered the distress beacon. The male Terran, Wade, was already directing his team into defensive positions. Any civilians in the crossfire? Dr. Velrai is still in the inner laboratory, attempting to stabilize the artifact. If the smugglers interrupt the process, or if they damage the artifact while it's in this activated state. Understood, Thorne replied grimly. Security Chief Wade will coordinate with your team. Our priority is securing the artifact and ensuring station safety. Before Harrow could respond, Wade had already opened a communication channel to the Terran ships. Defiant. This is Wade. We have confirmation of hostile forces attempting to steal dangerous technology, requesting tactical support and medical evacuation for Valeran casualties. The efficiency with which the Terrans organized themselves was both impressive and somewhat alarming to Harrow. Within moments, they had established a coordinated defense strategy with his remaining security personnel and were preparing to counterattack. Captain Harrow, Thorne said, interrupting his observations. We need to reach Dr. Velrai. Can you guide us to the inner laboratory through an alternative route? Harrow hesitated only briefly before nodding. There's a maintenance access way that bypasses the main corridor. I can lead a small team through while the others provide distraction. Perfect. Thorne turned to Wade. Chief, maintain position here and coordinate with Defiant for support. The captain and I will extract the doctor and secure the artifact. As they moved toward the hidden access panel, Harrow found himself re-evaluating his initial assessment of these Terrans. They had responded to a distress call from unknown origins without hesitation, and now they were risking their lives to protect a Valeran station and technology they barely understood. Perhaps, he thought as he led Thorne into the narrow maintenance corridor, the Valeran High Council had been too quick to judge these so-called Deathworlders. Dr. Aaron Velrai worked frantically at the quantum containment controls, his fingers dancing across interfaces as he attempted to stabilize the increasingly erratic energy patterns emanating from the ancient artifact. Outside the laboratory's reinforced doors, he could hear the sounds of battle, energy weapons, shouted commands, the occasional explosion. Maintain quantum coherence, he muttered to himself, a scientist's mantra in the midst of chaos. Isolate the recursive feedback loop. Dampen the subspace resonance. The artifact pulsed with increasing brightness, its glyphs now glowing with an intensity that forced Aaron to shield his eyes. Whatever he had accidentally activated was growing stronger, not weaker, despite his best efforts to contain it. A sudden explosion against the laboratory doors made him flinch. The reinforced barrier buckled inward, but held, though Aaron doubted it would withstand another such blast. Computer, initiate emergency containment protocol Velrai Alpha 3, he commanded. Warning, responded the station's AI. Protocol Velrai Alpha 3 will render the laboratory atmosphere non-viable for Valeran physiology for approximately 47 standard minutes. Understood. Execute. A transparent energy field shimmered into existence around the artifact and its pedestal, just as the laboratory doors finally gave way. Through the smoke and debris, Aaron could make out the forms of several Rhizok smugglers, their environmental suits and masked faces giving them an almost insectoid appearance. Step away from the artifact, Valeran, the lead smuggler demanded, his voice distorted through his breathing apparatus. Our employer will have it, with or without your cooperation. Aaron stood his ground, though every instinct urged him to flee. This technology is dangerously unstable. If you attempt to remove it from the containment field, the resulting quantum cascade will destroy this entire section of the station, including yourselves. The smuggler laughed, an unpleasant sound even through the mask's filters. A convenient claim. Our scanners indicate the artifact is perfectly stable and broadcasting quite effectively. In fact, it seems to be calling for help. His head tilted in mock curiosity. I wonder who will answer. The Terrans already have, Aaron replied, hoping to give the smugglers pause. Their fleet surrounds the station. You won't escape with the artifact. Terrans? The smuggler seemed genuinely surprised. The beacon wasn't meant for them. Our employer was quite specific about who would answer this particular call. Before Aaron could question this cryptic statement, a movement in the ceiling access panel caught his attention. Captain Harrow and a Terran female were silently descending into the laboratory behind the smugglers. Aaron forced himself to maintain eye contact with the lead smuggler, giving no indication of the newcomer's presence. "Your employer," Aaron said, deliberately raising his voice to cover any sound, "clearly didn't inform you of the true nature of this artifact. It's not just a beacon. It's the control mechanism for a quantum wave bridge. In its current state, it's creating subspace distortions that will continue to expand until properly contained." "Enough stalling," the smuggler snapped, raising his weapon. "Step aside or be vaporized. Your choice, scientist." "I wouldn't do that if I were you," came a calm, authoritative voice from behind the smugglers. The Terran lieutenant had her weapon trained on the lead smuggler's head, while Captain Harrow covered the others. "Lower your weapons, slowly." The lead smuggler hesitated, then began to laugh again. "2 against 5? Poor odds, even for a Terran." "You might want to recalculate those odds," the lieutenant replied evenly. "Your ship has been disabled. Your escape route is blocked by Terran security forces. And this station is surrounded by the largest Terran battle group assembled outside our territory in a decade." Aaron watched the silent communication between the smugglers, subtle head movements and hand signals that suggested they were reconsidering their options. Unfortunately, reconsideration didn't mean surrender. "If we can't have it," the lead smuggler said quietly, "no one will." In a swift motion, he fired not at the Terrans, but at the artifact itself. Time seemed to slow as Aaron watched the energy bolt streak toward the containment field. His mind calculated the outcome in milliseconds. The field would absorb most of the energy, but not all. The artifact would destabilize. The quantum cascade would begin. Celestara Station would be torn apart by forces even the Valeran barely understood. But the bolt never reached its target. In a blur of movement, the Terran lieutenant had interposed herself between the weapon and the artifact. Some kind of personal shield activated on her forearm. The bolt struck the shield and dissipated in a shower of sparks. What followed happened so quickly that Aaron could barely process it. The Terran security chief and his team burst through the damaged doors, weapons firing with precise, non-lethal bursts that incapacitated 3 smugglers instantly. Captain Harrow and the lieutenant engaged the remaining 2, moving with a coordination that suggested years of combat training. Within moments, all 5 smugglers lay unconscious or restrained on the laboratory floor. "Dr. Velrai," the lieutenant approached, seemingly unconcerned by the weapon burn on her shield arm. "I'm Lieutenant Mara Thorne, Terran Alliance. That artifact needs stabilizing, and from what I overheard, you're the only one who knows how. What do you need?" Aaron blinked, still processing the rapid turn of events. I need access to the main quantum regulator. The one in this lab was damaged in the attack." "Can you use the one in my ship?" Thorne asked. "Our quantum technology might be different from yours, but the principles should be compatible." "Possibly, but we'd need to move the artifact, which is extremely risky in its current state." Captain Harrow joined them, securing his weapon. "What about the primary regulator in the central research hub? It's designed to handle much higher energy outputs." Aaron considered this. "That could work, but we'd need to create a mobile containment field to transport the artifact safely." "My team can assist with that," Thorne offered. "Terran ships use similar technology for transporting unstable materials. With your guidance, we should be able to adapt our equipment to your needs." As they quickly developed a plan, Aaron found himself oddly comforted by the Terrans' presence. Despite their fearsome reputation and military efficiency, they demonstrated a collaborative spirit and technical adaptability that reminded him of the Valerans' own values, just expressed through a more action-oriented cultural lens. Perhaps, he thought as they began the delicate process of establishing a mobile containment field, the universe had sent exactly the protectors they needed after all. Admiral Katarina Chen stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the holographic display of Celestara Station with intense focus. Reports from Lieutenant Thorne's team had clarified the situation substantially. The distress beacon had been accidentally activated during research into ancient technology. Ryzok smugglers had attempted to steal said technology, and the combined efforts of Terran and Valeran personnel had secured both the artifact and the station. What remained unclear was why this particular beacon had triggered such an aggressive response from the Ryzok, and what the smuggler had meant when he said the beacon wasn't meant for the Terrans. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the station. It's Captain Harrow of the Valeran Security Force." "On screen," Chen ordered. The silver-skinned captain appeared, his crystalline eyes reflecting the ambient light of what appeared to be a central command center. "Admiral Chen, I wish to extend the official gratitude of the Valeran High Council for your assistance in resolving our situation." Chen nodded acknowledgement. "The Terran Alliance always responds to distress calls. Captain, I'm pleased we could help prevent the theft of your technology." "More than that, Admiral, your personnel, particularly Lieutenant Thorne, have been instrumental in helping Dr. Velrai stabilize the quantum distortions caused by the artifact. Without your intervention, we might have lost the station entirely." "I'm glad to hear it. However, Captain, there are still unanswered questions about this incident that concern me." Harrow's expression tightened slightly. "Such as?" "The Ryzok aren't typically so bold as to attack a research station directly, especially one with any kind of security presence. Their leader implied they had a specific employer interested in this particular artifact and its beacon capabilities. That suggests a targeted operation rather than an opportunistic raid." After a moment's hesitation, Harrow nodded. "Your assessment matches our own. Dr. Velrai has been analyzing the data recovered from the smugglers' communication devices. He believes they were working for someone with extensive knowledge of ancient quantum technologies, possibly even the civilization that created the artifact in the first place." Chen's interest sharpened. "You're suggesting survivors of this ancient civilization still exist?" "It's one possibility. Another is that a third party has discovered how to interpret and utilize these technologies for their own purposes." Harrow paused, seeming to come to a decision. "Admiral, with the Council's authorization, I would like to invite you and your senior officers to Celestara for a full briefing on our findings. This situation may have implications beyond Valeran space." "I accept your invitation, Captain. I'll shuttle over with my executive staff within the hour." As the communication ended, Chen turned to her XO. "Thoughts, Commander?" "Suspicious timing," the commander replied immediately. "An ancient beacon accidentally activates. Smugglers just happen to be ready to steal it. And the Valerans suddenly want to share classified research with us? I don't like coincidences. Admiral, neither do I." Chen studied the holographic representation of Celestara Station thoughtfully. "But I'm also interested in why a distress beacon supposedly designed by an ancient civilization would broadcast on frequencies that our ships could detect. Frequencies that, by all accounts, the Valeran themselves couldn't fully analyze." "You think the beacon was intended for us specifically? Humans weren't even spacefaring when this artifact was created." Chen's expression remained neutral, but her mind raced with possibilities. "Perhaps not for humans specifically, Commander, but for a certain type of species, the kind that evolves on worlds harsh enough to forge protectors rather than philosophers." "Deathworlders," the commander murmured. "Precisely." Chen straightened her uniform. "Prepare my shuttle. I want to see this artifact for myself and learn exactly what kind of protection its creators were looking for." The central research hub of Celestara Station had been transformed into an impromptu command center, with Valeran and Terran personnel working side by side at various stations. The ancient artifact, now stabilized within a combined Valeran-Terran containment field, rested at the center of the chamber, its glyphs pulsing with a steady, subdued light. Dr. Aaron Velrai studied the latest quantum analysis results with growing excitement. Beside him, Lieutenant Thorne observed the holographic data display with keen interest. "This is remarkable," Aaron murmured. "With your quantum regulators supplementing ours, we've managed to not only stabilize the artifact, but also enhance our translation capabilities. The full message is becoming clear." "What does it say?" Thorne asked. Before Aaron could respond, the hub's doors slid open to admit Captain Harrow and a striking human female in an admiral's uniform, accompanied by several other Terran officers. "Dr. Velrai, Lieutenant," Harrow called. "May I present Admiral Katarina Chen of the Terran Alliance?" Aaron and Thorne straightened respectfully as the Admiral approached, her sharp eyes immediately focusing on the artifact. "So this is the device that summoned my fleet," Chen remarked. "It seems rather unassuming for something capable of broadcasting across such vast distances." "Its appearance is deceptive, Admiral," Aaron explained. "The artifact contains quantum entanglement technology far beyond even our current understanding. It doesn't merely broadcast a signal. It creates instantaneous subspace connections with compatible receivers, regardless of distance." "Compatible receivers?" Chen's gaze shifted from the artifact to Aaron. "You mean like Terran communication systems?" Aaron hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, although we didn't realize it initially. The beacon was specifically designed to be detected by technologies developed by species from more challenging evolutionary environments than the Valeran homeworld." "Deathworlder technology," Chen stated flatly. "That's the colloquial term." "Yes." Aaron gestured to the holographic translation floating above the artifact. "The complete message is quite specific. It translates roughly as, 'When darkness rises against the light, call upon the guardians of harsh worlds, the final protectors whose strength was forged in fire.'" A thoughtful silence fell over the gathered officials as they considered the implications. "The question," Captain Harrow finally said, "is what darkness the creators of this artifact were anticipating, and why they believed species like the Terrans would be their best defense against it." Admiral Chen studied the artifact with renewed interest. "Have you determined the age of this device?" "Approximately 8,000 standard cycles," Aaron replied. "It was discovered aboard a derelict vessel of unknown origin at the edge of the Antheris galaxy. And the Ryzok smugglers, what have you learned from them?" Harrow's expression darkened. "They were working for an anonymous client who paid them an extraordinary sum to retrieve the artifact, specifically after it had been activated. They were instructed to amplify the beacon signal, not silence it. As if their employer wanted to ensure the message was received," Chen mused. Lieutenant Thorne, who had been quietly analyzing the data, suddenly straightened. "Dr. Velrai, are these energy signatures from the Ryzok ship correct?" Aaron glanced at the readings she indicated. "Yes. Why?" "Because they match anomalous readings we detected 6 months ago near the Teresian Nebula, where 3 of our outposts went silent, without explanation." The implication hung heavy in the air until Admiral Chen broke the silence. "It seems we may have been summoned for a reason after all. Captain Harrow, I believe it's time for our governments to discuss a more formal alliance. Whatever darkness this artifact warns against, it appears it may already be rising." In the following weeks, Celestera Station became the center of unprecedented cooperation between the Valeran Cooperative and the Terran Alliance. Scientists from both species worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of the ancient artifact, while military strategists developed joint defense protocols for what was now being called the Quantum Beacon Network, a system of similar devices believed to exist throughout the galaxy. For Dr. Aaron Velrai, the experience had been transformative. His accidental activation of the beacon had not only introduced the Valeran to a powerful new ally, but had potentially saved countless lives from a threat they hadn't even known existed. "You're still working, Lieutenant, now Commander." Mara Thorne's voice interrupted his thoughts as she entered the laboratory. It's nearly the start of the station's rest cycle. Aaron smiled, his crystalline eyes shimmering in the dim light. I could say the same for you. Aren't you supposed to be supervising the installation of the new quantum communication array? Finished ahead of schedule. She approached the workstation where Aaron had been studying fragments of data recovered from the Ryzok ship. Any progress identifying their mysterious employer? Nothing conclusive yet. But I've been cross-referencing their communication protocols with historical databases. And there's something familiar about the encryption patterns. Aaron hesitated, then activated a secondary display. They bear striking similarities to the quantum signature of the artifact itself. Thorne's expression grew serious. You think whoever hired the smugglers is connected to the civilization that created the beacon? It's a possibility I can't dismiss. Aaron sighed, leaning back from his work. 8,000 cycles is a long time, even for advanced species. But what if some fragment of that ancient civilization survived? What if they've been waiting all this time for someone to activate their network of beacons? But why? Thorne asked the question that had been plaguing them all. Why create a system specifically designed to summon species like humans? And why would they then try to steal their own technology? Before Aaron could offer theories, Captain Harrow entered the laboratory, his usually composed demeanor showing signs of tension. Doctor, Commander, he acknowledged them quickly. We've just received word from the Terran outpost in the Septimus sector. They've detected energy signatures identical to those from the Ryzok ship, but on a much larger scale. And, he hesitated, they've also detected what appears to be another active quantum beacon. Thorne immediately activated her communicator. Admiral Chen needs to hear this. If there's another beacon, it's already been done, Harrow interrupted. The Admiral has ordered the Terran fleet to high alert and is dispatching a battle group to investigate. She's requesting Dr. Velry's assistance in case they encounter another artifact. Aaron nodded without hesitation. Of course, I'll prepare immediately. As Harrow departed to make arrangements, Thorne turned to Aaron with a thoughtful expression. You know, when my ancestors first ventured into space, they always wondered if they'd find anyone else out there, and if they did, whether those beings would be friends or foes. And now, Aaron asked, now I think the universe is more complex than that simple binary. Perhaps the creators of these beacons understood something fundamental about cosmic balance, that peace-loving species like the Valeran and protective species like humans are both necessary parts of a greater whole. Aaron considered this as he gathered his research materials. A symbiotic relationship across evolutionary paths, the philosophers offering wisdom and advancement, the protectors offering strength and security. Exactly, Thorne smiled. Your people accidentally summoned an entire Terran fleet. But maybe that's exactly what was supposed to happen, what needed to happen. As they prepared to depart for the Terran flagship, Aaron reflected on how dramatically his world had changed since that fateful day when he'd misinterpreted a quantum variance in an ancient script. What had seemed like a catastrophic error had instead opened the door to a powerful alliance, one that might prove essential in the face of whatever darkness was rising at the edges of known space. The beacon had called for protectors, and the Deathworlders had answered. Whatever came next, they would face it together, the peaceful philosophers and the warrior guardians, united by a message from the distant past to preserve the future of the galaxy. And somewhere in the vast emptiness between stars, other beacons waited, their quantum signals prepared to summon the final protectors when darkness threatened once more.